Thank you very much for this kind presentation, and Simona. And of course, thank you also to the author of the book, Agatino and Anindita. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm here in a double position in the sense that I'm also let's say the host of the event in the position of the curator of the Italian Pavilion, which make me particularly grateful to you all, also to our guests and panelists, because I would like to say that this book has been, I don't know if I ever told to Tino, but it's been kind of influential, especially in a certain phase of the design of the Italian Pavilion, very helpful. Many reflections came from the discussion that Tino and I had about this book. So I would say that I was particularly happy to have you here in the Italian Pavilion virtually. I'm very far now. By the way, I'm very close to, on my window here, I see the United Nations building. I'm in New York now, and I think this is also kind of inspiring because a lot of what I would like to say is related to the 17 goals of the United Nations. So what I was trying to say is that the double pleasure condition, the double pleasure situation, this one. And I want also to highlight for those who don't know that this book has been highly influential also for my work. I would like to underline especially two aspects of the book that for me have been particularly significant and have been common ground for the discussion between me and the curatorial group regarding the concept of the Italian Pavilion. These two aspects were the level of politics that is needed to be discussed every time that we talk about sustainability in architecture and resilience. The fact that also the discussion about the possibility to build architecture or to plan cities for climate change must consider the potential war against the forces, the conservative forces of the capitalism that are particularly smart and prepared in make a sort of resistance to the change. The second aspect, which is very much related to the first, is the speed of mass communication, which is which maybe starts as an instrument, let's say, the taxonomy of, for example, the discussion on resilience that starts from within the research environment, but very quickly can be cannibalized and digested by the inertial forces of the society, and can be used to do the let's say the opposite of what we expect the job should be. So I think that this was a discussion, this is a reflection that is also part of the preface of the book, and this I would say that this was particularly evident also in the presentation that Anindita made, where we have seen very clearly that the potential ideas that that were at the foundation of the project, where most of them were more, let's say, buzzing words, were more, let's say, instruments to prepare the basis of more the speculative project, and if not greenwashing. So I would like to share very quickly a presentation about this, if I can find it. Okay, this aspect. Let me check if I can. As you can see from the logo of the Italian Pavilion, probably is already immediate present the need of understanding the responsibility and the role of activism that we need to take in consideration every time that we face issues related to the city. As we said at the beginning, we know that everything was already there, but has been somehow accelerated by the crisis. Or let's say differently, the crisis, the climate crisis, has emphasized the criticality of our society. Marginalization has become higher, and let's say all the differences have become more and more evident today. When we talk about taxonomy, it's always important to consider that something is happening that obliges us to rethink our surrounding reality in a more holistic way. This is the first time that humanity has to face a dimension of crisis like this, like the one that we are facing now. But also there is a problem in understanding this crisis. This is why it's easier for, let's say, the predatory forces of the economy to control the change, because this is the first time that which in the history of humanity the crisis is coming from the sky. The blue sky has always been seen as something particularly positive, while everything was coming, the dystopian signs of our society were coming from darkness and so on. So this creates us a difficulty in the management, in the way we handle the terminology and the let's say the main elements of the discussion under a certain level of rationality. As you can see here, in a very simple way, the idea of the Italian pavilion is to try to understand how it is possible to sign a new agreement with the environment, starting from let's say the historic compact city, not from new town foundation. This is not only related to what we have seen before. So the mega project have a cost that goes beyond the fact that they are apparently sustainable. This also comes from transdisciplinary research, which is again another aspect which is highly relevant in the publication in Predatory Urbanism as a research publication. This is not even something new. We can all remember a discussion about this. Sorry, I forgot to do this. A general discussion about the fact that we are living in a reality now, for the reason I was mentioning before, that is not static anymore. It's dynamic, it's fluctuant, and it's not progressive. This is also very important. These considerations don't come from the field of architecture, or let's say we are assuming them, but they derive from consideration coming from the new taxonomy evolutionary biology. New generation of biologists taught us that the world is not like we interpret this in architecture. 2000 years of history of civilization architecture are not necessarily the best situation that allow us to deal with this crisis. Here you see an example of one of the projects presented in the Italian Pavilion, which is a Warca Tower by Arturo Vittori. And the reason why we presented this project is just a representation of this butterfly effect. We have to consider today that if we put a brick in our soil in Italy, for instance, there is an immediate effect in terms of CO2 emissions that can be even measured perfectly in terms of percentage of desertification of these 10 meters a day of desertification in the global south areas. So this is an evident, a clear sign of the fact that now we have to consider the dynamicity, the fluid dynamic of the environment, not only for ethical or moral reasons, but because this is a precise responsibility we have. what I'm trying to say is that it's evident that mega projects that we have seen before, even if they have, for instance, 100% of energy generated by photovoltaic panels, this is not. This is going to be very far to be sufficient to generate a positive effect on the planet, because what is not calculated beside the life cycle assessment is the fact that the Hinc et Nunc idea of architecture is something that doesn't exist anymore. A mega project can have an immediate impact, negative impact, even if it's truly interpreted in a technological way as sustainable. And this impact, as I was saying before, is an impact that goes beyond the resources, or let's say that resources have an immediate impact in the social pressure. So what we are changing is the definition of the physical condition of the troposphere, with consequences that are uncontrollable at the moment, and they are controllable in terms of resources, as we see here. And when we consider the fact that within 30 years we will arrive in a condition in which half of the world population will be below the level of nutrition. Today we are the calculation is 20%, so 1 billion out of 7. We have to consider that there is something that goes beyond ethical, beyond morality. We know for history, and we have one case, which is in the 536, after the probably closest climate crisis we had, due to volcans in Iceland. They changed completely the society, at least in Europe, with millions of deaths, what we call the Gothic Wars. So what I'm trying to say is that what we have to expect when 50% of the population is under the level of nutrition is permanent worldwide war. So there is only one way probably to go beyond to overcome this what we can call impossible equation. The fact that we are going in a way that increase of population and reduction of resources are basically uncontrollable. And also the fact that this condition is mainly due to the construction, to the way we build cities and how we build cities. The solution, despite what I'm saying till now, I'm fundamentally an optimistic person. So the idea is that, of course, we have to consider transdisciplinarity as something that can teach us many things, like the fact, for example, that high density compactness is very equivalent to what in exaptation is the use of the functional cooptation of existing structure, and the fact that resilience mainly depends by the disorder. So I like to highlight that this book is in a way trying to break a stigma, the stigma of the order. I'm not the first one talking about this. We know that this is a discussion that even Christopher Alexander or Richard Sennett since the 70s is doing. So let's say that every time that we build architecture, considering the order, the organization, the planning, deterministic planning as a tool, as a strategy, without considering the possibility of combining, not as an alternative, but combining this with informal practices, what we are doing is basically reducing the possibility of the community to express themselves and make the community more resilient and more cohesive. And what we didn't know when Christopher Alessandro was writing this and when Richard Sennett was starting his discussion on this topic is that this is also creating more CO2 emissions. So there is something that is not working, something that we have to change in the taxonomy, and this is what the book is trying to do. If we consider informal cities are the generation of the city, while we know today that the formal city is the main cause of CO2 emission and the main cause of crisis, while the informal cities is the place that will suffer the consequences of these aspects. So it's clear that in this contradiction there is the evidence of the fact that the taxonomy, the current taxonomy of architecture, is not working, needs to be changed. And this is not something that is underestimated by the United Nations when they specified that integration is as important as the goals. So we are all aware that we have to embrace this complexity. It's not the time anymore to say, okay, we have to face the poverty, we have to challenge the poverty without considering the problem of climate. This is not possible anymore. So we are in a situation in which also the extremization of climate is telling us one thing that is very clear. It's not possible to have a sustainable society without having a just society. And it's not because it's an ethical position. It's not because it's a moral position, because as Telmo Pievani, the most influential biologist of evolution, Italian biologist of evolution, following the lessons of Stephen Jay Gould, is telling us that nature is not moral, so it doesn't care if we are just or not. This is not the point. The point is that we know that this is diversity, variability, and redundancy of organism are the only way to make this organism resistant, resilient to change, capable to be adaptable to changes. So considering the heuristic value of biology, what we know today is that the main possibility, the only way to make our societies more resilient to crisis is to make them more diverse. So in a way, in a very simple way, it's just like repeating what Bernard Rudowski, in a way, intuitively already said. We are not talking about architecture. In the history of architecture, we are not talking about architecture. We are not talking about planning. We are mostly talking about a very limited selection of culture coming from the Western world. And what we know today, this is why a discussion of diversity is important at all levels, is that this selection is done by white male with an age between 50 and 70 years old, like myself, by the way. So I am a dinosaur, so that's clear. And Tino is very close to be a dinosaur as well. So it's clear that I totally agree. I could not be more happy when when Tino called me to write the preface of this book, because he was talking about predatory, and in the same period I was writing a book which was about zombie city, because in a way I thought that what we are doing is not only a predatory, keeping alive a predatory economy, but we are keeping alive a zombie economy, in the sense that the predatory economy that Agatino is considering is economy that we are trying to keep alive as if it's more convenient. But what we are doing is investing billions in keeping alive a dead body. And we have quantitative data that are telling us that this is the situation. I would like to simply to conclude with the images of Bernard Rudowski that are showing us that there is also a stigma in the idea of informality that need to be discussed, because every time we are talking about informality as if this is somehow a representation of what, in this case, not positive, I would say, from my perspective, the United Nations are describing as lack of infrastructure and so on. So basically slums. No, if we check, 20% of population is living in slums, but not more than 20% of population is living in planned cities. So according to the Martin School of the University of Oxford, there is a 60% of life that take place in the urban settlements that don't belong to plan or slums. So what is this? This is a dark architecture, dark matter of architecture that need to be considered, and this is what stays at the marginality of the predatory economy, and it is exactly there that I'm sure we can find opportunities for overcoming the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.